Hello, welcome back to DDB 101. Today we're going to talk about PAT, pause erase time. So if we recall from the previous video, so there's one particular issue regarding interactive debugging on distress applications. That is, timeouts always disrupt the debugging flow. For example, in this case, one process trying to reach out to another process through RPC, and let's say developer trying to understand what's going on the receiver side whenever the receiver receives the RPC. So it uses GDB to pause the execution for the callee. But if the developer pauses a little bit too long, the caller just gonna time out and give error and just exit the code logic. This creates many issues for interactive debugging. So DDB handle this thing by using a technique called PAT, or pause erase time. Essentially, DDB manipulates the time so that it can actually compensate for all the execution process during the debugging sessions. For example, here, if the DDB saw the callee is paused, DDB gonna actually pause all the process. Then, right before developer trying to continue the execution, the DDB gonna calculate how much time they actually paused. For example, here, let's say DDB say they paused for 5 seconds. Then, right before continuing execution, DDB just gonna apply an offset of 5 seconds to all the attached process, so that both process just gonna feels like they never actually got paused. Now, let's jump right into an example here. Let's first take a look at this simple example. In this example, this application essentially is just gonna print out the time every 1 second. Let me first run this application directly. So you can see it just print out the timestamp every 1 second. Now let's try to attach it to DDB. This time, we are not having PAT enabled. So we just directly attach to DDB, but the PAT mechanism is disabled in this time. Let's see how it works. Okay, let me continue. And then pause. So let's pause for a couple of seconds and continue the execution. And pause again. So you can see here, there's almost 7 seconds gap because we were paused during this time. That's why we saw a big time gap here. If we repeat this thing multiple times, you can see pretty much similar patterns. You saw substantial time gap here. Now let's try to use DDB with PAT enabled. To enable PAT, you have to prepend this command called DDB run app. And DDB run app will be installed when you install the DDB. So essentially, it's a helper script which enables the PAT mechanism. Now let's try to attach this. Let me click continue. So you keep printing the timestamp. Now let's pause. Let me pause for a little bit more seconds and continue. So this time you can see the time gap is never here. So it feels like it never actually got paused. Now, let me show you another example. This program essentially, again, it's a while loop, and essentially just gonna print out the current time, then right after the printing, go to the sleep for 5 seconds. So if I directly run this app, it will look like this. So you print out the timestamp, sleep for 5 seconds, wake up, print out another timestamp. Now, let's try to start DDB and attach this thing without PAT enabled. Let me continue. Then I'm gonna pause the execution right after it prints out a new line of timestamp. Here, I pause the execution. So it should sleep for 5 seconds, then wake up, print another line. But if we pause enough time so that the actual time already passed the 5-second deadline, and whenever we click continue, you can see there's immediately line prints out, says the time already passed. Now let's restart DDB with pet enabled. Again, I'm gonna follow in the similar pattern as I showed before. Here, I pause the execution right after seeing this line. And I'm gonna pause for a little bit more than 5 seconds to see how behavior differs from previous run. Now, let me actually continue this execution. So you can see it's still sleeping. And after a while, it prints out new line. So here you can see there's 5 seconds gap here. So you can see the pet is correctly working here to manipulate the time so that the application or the process feels like it never actually got paused. So it needs to sleep a little bit more to reach to the 5-second deadline. And that's how pet works. That's it for today's video.